Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Poppy Wellness Show, a show where we focus on everything health related. And this is because we want you to lean into the better version of yourself, whether that's emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. It's all about how you can become the best version of yourself and to use your potential. Today on the show, I have a super duper special guest, and she's special because you probably all know her, but in her own right, she has just dived into so many different fields, especially a field that I'm very passionate about, which is children. And she focuses on them, children these days, especially with the pandemic that we just are getting over. They're affected. And a lot of people don't see that, but she does focus on that. And I'm going to give the stage to her. Welcome, Mallika Chopra, drum roll, which we don't have, but thank you so much for being on the show today with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be chatting.
Of course, of course. So, Mallika, I know that obviously you are a published author, you're an entrepreneur, you do so many things, and you're also a mother. And just recently, you came out with a series of books, which is the Just Me, Just Feel, and Just Be Me. Did I
So
get the third one correct?
yeah, no, so it's called it's the Just Be series, but the first is Just Breathe, then Just Feel, and then the last one which just came out is Just Be You.
Just Be You. You know, I was very fascinated when I saw these because these days, well, first of all, let's kick it off with how did you even come up with doing a series of meditation books for kids?
So I grew up. My many people know my father is Deepak Chopra. I learned how to meditate when I was 9, so I'm a lifelong meditator. I am also a mom of a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old, and so these practices have been part of our journey ever since they were born. And what I realized is that there weren't actually many tools out there directly for kids. There are plenty of parenting books or meditation books, but for kids directly. And I was 9 years old when I discovered these practices. There weren't resources. So the series of these books are really about giving the tools of meditation, mindfulness, but also social and emotional knowingness and well-being, as
Mhm.
well as self-reflection and intention. And that's what the last book is about.
Is it difficult for a child? I mean, you started at 9 years old. If I was 9 years old, I just wanted to play or maybe go out with my friends or maybe play Nintendo. Is it hard for them to really understand the concept to sit down and really zone out and meditate? How can you get a child to focus and really do that?
So I think therein is the misperception. We're not
Right.
trying to get kids to sit down and zone out and just be still and silent. Rather, what we're doing is we're giving kids tools for self regulation and self knowing. So that begins with breathing, and just how can you use breath to transition from a fight flight response, which is a normal response to stressful situations, to a more conscious response. How can we use movement, whether it's through mindful walks or yoga poses or just stretching, to release stress from the body but also be aware of body awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And how can we use moments of mindfulness? So, being aware of how food tastes and looks and makes us feel, or the sounds of nature if we go for a mindful walk. So, it really begins with things that are age appropriate for kids to find more connection to their breath, to their body, to their thoughts, and to their environment. And then in time, introducing techniques like a meditation practice. But again, that is in an age appropriate and relevant way because not all kids are going to connect to that practice. So my goal is to just give tools for knowing this.
Wow, amazing. So tell me this. kids when they're growing up, they have so many different personalities and it bounces off of each other, or they have fear of being judged. So sometimes being yourself, especially when maybe your family is different, and then your neighborhood or your society and all these elements differ. How can um, because it's also one of the books, you had that Just Be book. How can you really be? I mean, I strive every day to be more of my authentic self, and stop carrying the baggage. And I'm not a child anymore, or else I think I'm not a child. But how can a child really um, find their authenticity, or at least try?
So our kids today are growing up one in more multicultural environments, which is wonderful because there's more diversity. When I grew up in a small town in Boston, I think there were three of us who were people of color in this entire town. But I think the gift that my parents gave my brother and I were gifts like meditation, self reflection, being authentic about the qualities we ask for in our life. And so it was a sense of inner knowingness, which gave more confidence to be our authentic selves rather than trying to fit into kind of the larger society. So I think my books come from that. They come from being different, but also finding pride in difference, and also from everything. And that's what I try to share in the new book, Just Be You, which is everything from your name. Where does your name come from? Thinking about your family's history and the family stories, which sometimes are positive, but often are very negative. But in self reflection, in thinking about what do you want, and I share often this saying that my father used to teach my brother and I. It says, I'm responsible for what I see, I choose the feelings I experience, and set the goals I will achieve. And everything that seems to happen to me, I ask for and receive as I have asked. And when we were young, my dad would ask us, what do you ask for? And we would say tickets to the Celtics, a trip to Hawaii, new clothes, things like that. And then
Right.
he'd say, okay, but what about asking for love, connection, inspiration, a sense of purpose? So we were taught to ask for the qualities in our life that would make us happier, healthier, more connected, and of purpose. So, if we give children the tools to ask for the qualities they want in their life beyond just the material things or the acceptance, then from an early age, I think we're giving them more confidence and grounding in being articulate about their wants and needs, and also finding more pride in them.
Absolutely. So I'm gathering that it's all about the tools. Just as you give a child maybe a broccoli or a piece of chocolate, you also give them that tool of confidence. And it's providing it and letting it exist outside and giving it to
Yes, and the tool is a tool of knowingness. So
them.
when we breathe, even just in taking a deep breath, we pause kind of the constant racing of thoughts and we connect more to our inner self. Then we can add three breaths, five breaths, a meditation practice, a mindfulness practice, but it all comes down to really knowing. Our inner selves, which is beyond all the thoughts and the labels and the judgments that are always there, but really taking that, having that experience that we can carry with us throughout our life of, who we really are, our soul, our that presence that we have that is always with us.
Right. A lot of schools, they have so many different uh, they have 45 minutes for history, 45 for math. I think it's so imperative. I mean, now businesses are setting up meditation rooms. I remember a company that I worked for, we were 3 stories in New York City, and every one of them had a meditation room. I think if I think all the schools should have meditation rooms for these kids. What's your take on that?
I think it's great that meditation and mindfulness and just social emotional learning is being incorporated in the classroom, and it's fabulous. I'm all for meditation rooms and exercises, but I think at the end of the day, it's more about incorporating these aspects in every part of our life. So it should be that kids know how to breathe, that they know how to be aware of why their body reacts to different situations. So, yes, a meditation room, a meditation practice is fine, but it's not, I don't see this as an add on. It should be something that's incorporated in all aspects of the day. So, and many schools are doing this where, instead of time out, you're doing time in. Maybe when you're walking to the cafeteria, if our kids ever make it back to school, what, trying a quiet walk, a mindful walk, incorporating attentive listening. So there's so many tools. It's not just about putting a meditation room and they can go sit there for 10 minutes.
Right, 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 right. It's to really spread it out so it becomes part of their life. Mallika, I know that you also do a lot of you talk to a lot of TED communities and business talks, and you are also part of a new Apple series, Stillwater. Now, we were just talking about kids and how it's imperative to be part of their lives. Tell us a little about the older kids, which you would be a part of. I mean, um, everybody, the world is constantly evolving. People tend to get lost or lose awareness, lose their self of knowingness. And now you do so much with your website, intent.com, with this new Apple series, Stillwater, and with the talks that you give. What are the questions that people normally ask you uh, that they need clarifications on?
Yeah, so I have a book for adults. It's called Living with Intent: My Somewhat Messy Journey to Purpose, Peace, and Joy. And the messy journey subtitle there is very important and,
Right.
really describes the journey. So for me, I grew up meditating. I grew up with all these tools, but like everyone else, uh, found myself juggling too many things between business, parenting, just life in general, not exercising, not eating well, turning to sugar to deal with stress and anxiety, and losing my meditation practice.
Right.
And so that book is really about my journey of re anchoring myself amongst all of the demands that we have. And so I outline in there what I call the path to intent, which is really a step by step process of really thinking about who am I, what do I want, how can I serve, and what am I grateful for, which are actually the four subjects in the Just Be book. But in that, the path to intent is around the acronym INTENT. So I is for incubate, and taking quiet time to really think about who you are and what you want.
Hmm.
N is for noticing your thoughts, noticing the distractions that we all have, the messages our body is sending us, the people and places that we encounter every day. T is for trust, trusting our intuition. So when we ask ourselves, what do I want? We're really honest and authentic. As a working mom, with many demands, that's something I think many women struggle with often: family versus work, what's the right balance. E is for express, so actually stating what you want and taking ownership of it. The next N is for nurture, which is about self care, learning to say no, letting go of guilt. And then the final T is take action. So the time for smart goals. But smart goals come in place, and we're more successful when we know why we're doing things. And so that's really what I do with adults when we do workshops and programs, is really go deeper and think about what are your intentions, what are your deepest desires, and why, and then coming up with a path to that. Stillwater is something completely different, which is Apple Plus TV. And I think that really falls into what I'm trying to do, of just all the different tools we can give to children. So I've written these books. Stillwater is this amazing animated show, actually on the Chopra app, which is a new meditation app that we've recently launched. I have a series of meditations for children and
Which
for
I downloaded, by the way. And I'm not, I have a child within, but
No, absolutely. And that's the thing. Whatever the tools may be,
Right.
we all find them at different times in our life, and there's not one solution for everyone. So, similarly to adults, with kids, we want to give them an offering that they can find what they need.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, in the time of the pandemic, I know a lot of people are suffering from depression or loneliness, or I think the more deep question is the meaning of what loneliness is to them. I mean, some people think that their life is defined by going out every night, and it might be the stage of life or talking to someone, but it's really finding that inner peace within yourself that you're okay. Like you said, intent the end, nurture yourself. I guess maybe that we can lean on the end part. But what would be a message that you can have to our audience regarding, right now we may be at the tail end of this pandemic, hopefully knock on wood with the vaccines out, but how to deal with, it's okay to be alone. It's okay to nurture yourself and read a book or play guitar or knit, whatever feels right for you. What would be your message?
So, my message to anyone is that it's okay to struggle. Um, or not that it's okay to struggle, but the struggle is normal and natural, as well as the feelings of loneliness, of sadness, of loss, and grief are very real. And it's very important to also recognize that they're real and to work through them. So it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel sad. We don't want to create like a fake positive dialogue here when it is a really hard time. So similarly with our kids, I think it's really important that we recognize it's a time of uncertainty and anxiety. So that's step one. It's okay to feel your feelings. I mean, they're real. And if we don't accept and express them, they'll manifest in physical situations or even illness. So that's the first step. The second step is also to reach out to people. And we don't need a huge group of people. Like I even tell my 16-year-old daughter, like her two best friends are real friends. They're people that genuinely love her and care for her and are connected to her. And so as long as we have one or two people, lean into that and reach out to people. So, we can feel alone in the most crowded place or party, and so sometimes it doesn't matter how many people are around, but it's about finding the deeper relationships. I think one of the things that maybe this pandemic life has done is so many of us have reflected on what we do every day, the busyness of every day, how we work, but also relationships. And, it's kind of honed in, at least for me, my family and a few people who I rely on in my life because I can't be in touch with everyone. At the same time, what's happened is I've reconnected with college friends on Zoom and things that maybe before I was too busy to do.
Right,
I've had more space to make some of the connections of people who really mean a lot to me.
right. do you, I mean, the college, it's very interesting that you say, because they bring out a part of you that may have been hibernating or sleeping, and you're saying, oh, I'm still just just saying, Malika, when I was 20 years old, oh, what a beautiful part of me that was. You kind of remember that, and then you pull that in to the person that you are today. What it sounds like to me is that you're focusing on the kids and all the elderly, the older population, but it's really about learning this from the start, and especially putting the foundation in the kids. And it makes me so happy that you're doing this on Apple Plus and these books, and I'm really hoping, on an international level, this really hits a lot of people, because um, especially in different cultures, this may not be such acceptable as other cultures. Now, speaking of different cultures, I've talked with so many different people. The cultures that have a little bit more less boundaries, um, more to set in maybe a cultural way or a religious way, how can you implement this new way of thinking into some of the cultures that are very protective of their being?
So one is when it comes to these practices like breathing, like taking a mindful walk, um, they're universal, so there's nothing kind of religious. They really are secular, and I think that's why we're trying to introduce them in schools and in communities around the world. That being said, each culture, different religions, different practices have their own ways of finding that connection. So,
Right.
it may be through Sufism and dancing, or through chanting, or through a meditation practice, or through something physical. My daughter practices Taekwondo from Korea. So, there are different ways, there are martial arts practices. So that is where we find the tools in a cultural context that also make more sense. But I think it's really important to understand that these techniques are more about who, as individuals, wherever we are, we have certain reactions. Our body reacts in a certain way, our mind reacts in a certain way. So even just the self-regulating tools are something that's very universal.
Absolutely. Can I ask you this notion of, I find that this notion of taking time for myself, drawing that, I mean, you're a mother, you're also a very accomplished businesswoman, so how can you separate these things to actually nourish yourself but draw those boundaries with the most important thing in your life, which is your family and your children, and then you have your colleagues, then you have your college friends, and then your new friends? How can you balance it? How can you draw those boundaries, and um, with the intent that you have?
So I think that that's very much part of that INTNT that I mentioned, the trust and trusting your intuition. So when I ask myself, what do I want? That often it changes at different stages in your life. But to keep checking in and being honest and authentic about it. So for me, the way that it comes with a lot of privilege, which is when I thought about my career, for me, my number one priority was to have flexibility and be home with my kids in a way that made sense in my partnership with my husband. So it was a very thoughtful approach. But, and now they're getting older, and that's transitioning, and that's giving me more time. So I have learned that, one, let go of guilt, because often we're just guilty about things that we shouldn't be. And frankly, no one else cares. It's just we build it up ourselves. Like I talk about, I think in my book, like all this guilt I had because I wouldn't do hot lunch at school. And, I felt like I was being a bad mom and community member. And like, honestly, my kids couldn't care less because they didn't have hot lunch. I don't think anybody else there noticed. It was purely my own self dialogue and need for importance. So one, it's like letting go of guilt. And I think the other thing is learning to say no, and setting the boundaries, and setting, so being disciplined actually, and also doing things that are serving your needs and the needs of those around you.
I think the setting no part is really on point, and there's you could use a certain kind of tone and a certain side softness to it, and really convey that no, um, instead of thinking, oh, maybe that person will get hurt with the no. So, as we're rounding up, I want you, what is the most important message from your book, from your thoughts, from your experiences that you could share with everyone that's watching this today?
I think right now, what I'm with Just Be You, the latest book for children, is actually a great book for adults too, which is honoring your uniqueness, honoring your quirks, being honest about your likes, your dislikes, but ultimately also asking, how can I serve? And that's how can I serve myself and how can I serve the world. And so if you're coming from that mentality, then the path becomes a little bit clearer about how to move forward.
And even if you don't know how you're, every day after I meditate, I always say, universe, how can I serve? And sometimes the answer isn't clear. I don't even know I can serve. And that's okay. And that's okay.
So
Just
I have a TEDx talk specifically about this. It
okay.
may be you can just serve by driving your kid. For me, it was driving my kid to soccer practice and being present and enjoying that time together. It may be just taking care of yourself. So, again, we don't have to serve in this universal, intimidating way. It can be the smallest thing. It can be calling your mom and just saying, "How are you?" So it's in the most intimate, minute ways that we can serve that lead ultimately to larger service. So don't even worry about it.
Right. You don't have to sign the next treaty between the two countries. All you have to do is just bring some kindness or some love to yourself and others. Mallika, I can't, I mean, first, I am a fan, of course, of you, of your father. And I was introduced to meditation at 28, and I'm 40 years old and I have not gone back. So I'm thank you so much for all your books, all your energy and your positive messages. So, and thank you for being on the Poppy Wellness Show today with me. And we're definitely going to circle back with you for more episodes. And everyone, I'm going to put her website. I'm going to put her books. These books are just changing the world, the face of the world, and it's really what every child, every adult needs in their life. So thank you for joining us.